Okie doke, guys. We're back on another ride along. Today, I have the pleasure of taking out the K10. It's a beautiful sunny day. We're just gonna go for a nice little cruise. We have a 360 cam attached to the back to kind of capture some different angles of this thing cruising down the road. I'm probably just gonna go on the freeway, drive around a little bit, talk about the driving experience, take you guys for a ride with me so you can see what it's like to cruise in this K10. So one of the big advantages to having a truck on 35s is the seating position is way up there. You basically have nothing in your way as far as vision goes, and I really like that. You're able to have like a command, especially coming out on like intersections and stuff. You're not looking right into the headlights of other cars. You kind of sit over the road and you can see what's going on in front of you with traffic and everything. Something nice. I think that's a big reason SUVs sell so well versus like station wagons and cars and low to the ground vehicles that like we're used to here at RestoMods. We usually have a vehicle that's lowered. You really don't have to push this thing for as big of tires as it has. Very light throttle. I'm cruising like 2,500 RPM. It goes through the gears. Not a big deal. I wish I could take this thing off-roading. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of the city and there's not really anywhere close to go off-roading. I'm detecting a little squeal off this power brake pedal. It's an all-new power brake setup with a Wilwood master. So one of those bushings is just making a little bit of noise. We'll get that fixed for you guys before we deliver it. Yeah, so we're like in the middle of the city. To go even do like a small trail is like probably a solid 45-minute to an hour drive out of here. I would love to take you guys on that long of a drive, but it's probably not gonna happen today. The sun might set before that happens. So one thing about being up high is that you're not taking turns super fast in this truck. It is stable, it feels solid, but it's not a sports car, you know, so you just take it easy on a nice tight turn. You don't need to really like gas it and see what she's got. We always get questions about you know, how a car cruises in modern traffic. Obviously, we're dealing with cars. This is you know, from the 60s and 70s, so this is not a modern car. But with that being said, this thing has the LS power and it's got the big tires. It's on 35-inch tires. So even though it has a transmission that's a 1-to-1 gear ratio, those big tires kind of offset it. If you were in this truck with a modern overdrive transmission, what you see a lot of times when guys have a modern truck and they put 35-inch tires on it, they have to actually re-gear the rear end. And that's because it kind of messes with your cruising RPM at freeway speeds. When you factor in the bigger tire, it's essentially like you have a different gear ratio rear end. So when we have a 1-to-1 gear ratio transmission and the 35-inch tires, it actually works out good on the freeway with you not really needing that overdrive. And sometimes people, the re-gearing, the benefit from that too is that coming off the line, you get a little more, it feels a little torquier. But because we have such a light truck and the 6-liter LS engine, it doesn't really feel underpowered off the line, so it makes up for that. So it's kind of a happy medium. When we do get up to cruising speed in this truck, it's at like 2,400 RPM on the freeway, which is kind of the sweet spot for an LS engine. Anything under that, I've been in cars with a 6-speed manual, and in 6th gear, they kind of just lug along. They're at like, you know, like 1,500 or 1,600 RPM, and that's really not ideal as far as cruising speed. It's too low. Some people may think, oh, you're gonna get good gas mileage with that. That's not really how it works. Gas mileage is dependent on like engine load and RPM. So you could have low RPM, but every time you hit the gas, you just don't have enough load on the engine, so you're cracking that throttle wide open, and your computer's basically going to be dumping more fuel into it to try and compensate for that. So there's always a sweet spot. Sometimes I like to look at kind of what the OEM manufacturers, you know, if you get into your new truck, like something that's similarly equipped with a LS engine, you'll kind of notice that cruising speed is right around that 2200 RPM range. So we're like 100 or 200 RPM above that, but it's kind of ideal, and it gets away from having to use a little bit more, I guess, fragile overdrive transmission. One thing you'll know, if you're into Chevys at all, the 4L60 is the overdrive transmission that probably would have come behind some of these LS engines, and they're not known for their durability. They're known to be a little bit fragile. You can upgrade to the 4L80 and have the overdrive, and that's essentially a turbo 400 with an overdrive. But this has a TH350. So with built internals and upgraded everything on a TH350, this thing is super solid. I've never really had problems with this transmission combo. So it's ideal to have it. It's a good combo in this truck, and it cruises just fine down the freeway. So that's a question we've gotten a lot, and every vehicle is different, but we're offsetting the tire size on it. The other thing is like stability in a truck like this. Once you get a taller truck on lifted springs, I mean, this still has like traditional style steering that this truck would have come with. It's not changed to like crossover or some other type of exotic steering setup, but it feels just fine. There is a little bit of play in the wheel, but it's not a lot. I mean, where you point the truck, it kind of goes there. So it's not like you're really sawing on the wheel to keep it straight. That's something that you do get a lot with a lifted truck with a steering box and you know, a drag link for the steering and everything. This does have a steering stabilizer on it, so that helps. But you know, kind of the point of taking you guys out on these cruises, whether they're shorter or longer or whatever they are, is to just show you guys like if you do win this car, like how livable is it? Or if you have a project that you're working on your own, like what is the ideal combo of parts that you're going to be able to comfortably drive and cruise and live with every day? So that can change. You know, every vehicle is different. So we get these cars and we kind of decide based on our drivetrain and our needs and stuff what the ideal setup is. And it works out great in this truck. We've upgraded a lot of things. The cooling system is completely gone through. We put an aluminum radiator with dual electric fans, and they're all controlled with the FiTech. So we can control on this little handheld like what temperature the fans come on and off at. So I think we have it set up right now for them to come on at 190 and turn off, I believe. Or I'm sorry, they come on, yeah, 190, 195, and then turn back off when it gets to about 200. So what you'll see is, like, depending on the range you set that at, this thing cruises about 200. Most LS engines cruise between 200 and 210. That's just ideal operating temperature for them. So we try and set up the fan on-off switch on the FiTech to kind of reflect that. So I wanted to go over some of these dips on this freeway. We have a freeway here that's notorious for having like really big whoops and dips. And this car doesn't have a lot of bump steer going through that. So that's kind of nice to be able to deal with that. Bump steer on a freeway is what can get sketchy on a big lifted truck, especially a straight axle truck. So as you just saw, we hit the bumps and this thing's not all over the road. I don't really need it. It's probably like 65 degrees, but we'll turn on the AC, get some fresh air in the cab. I have all the windows up. I do like just cruising with the windows down on a nice day like this. But you know, in the interest of filming a video, I'll have the windows up. Some of these cars have really good, yeah, see, I can actually roll the window down. It doesn't really get any noisier in here. But we'll just turn on the AC. This AC cranks, so just have that on and just be super comfortable in here. This has an Old Air Products under dash unit, which is a pretty good product. I've been super happy with it in this truck. We usually go for vintage air, but I've had other vehicles that have Old Air, and the box, the unit, the controls, everything works pretty good. So no problems with that. The stereo is upgraded. Let's see if we can get a station going here. Alright, stereo works. I'm not big into listening to too much music on these ride-along videos. But, you know, when you're by yourself and you're going for a cruise, you're probably going to want to listen to some music. So it's nice. This is like an upgrade. It looks kind of like the original one, but it's all digital. It has an auxiliary input, so you can connect your phone to it and just listen to music that way. I'm really glad we switched to the 6-liter. Even just going up a little hill like this, you don't have to like really get into it too much, and it makes plenty of torque. It's climbing the hill no problem. Speed limit is a little lower than what I'm actually going. But yeah, I'm glad we went with the 6-liter. The 5.3 was a great running engine. We had no issues with it. It ran and drove good. Actually, one of the other mechanics wanted it for another Chevy truck that he's building. Because it was a good engine. It had good oil pressure and everything, but you know, we wanted to make this truck like what the ideal setup would be for you guys. And although a 5.3 is great and everything, you know, we had the opportunity to put a known good running 6-liter. This thing has great oil pressure. It's at like 50 psi after we've been cruising for a while. So we went ahead and dropped it in. We knew it made good power. We had it in our shop truck. So it was just kind of a nice addition. And we like to tinker. We don't leave any of this stuff alone too much. We get these vehicles, and they're in different states when we get them. Sometimes they're really nice and really well built and finished. Sometimes they look nice and we get them and we want to dial everything in. It just depends on the vehicle. This truck, the paint was incredible. The interior obviously super nice. Had a lot of nice stuff done to it. So we decided to just give it some more power. So the 6-liter was great for that. I'm glad we did it. And the Dakota Digitals, these really look like original gauges. I think we've even had someone comment that they didn't think we had upgraded to the Dakota Digital because the way the faces are designed and everything looks so original. But believe me, these are definitely Dakota Digital. This is like their top of the line RTX series. It has little screens in here. Everything's programmable. We programmed the speedo. The tach is tuned into the FiTech computer. Oil pressure's hooked up. Fuel gauge works perfectly. Even though I look at the temperatures on the FiTech gauge a lot, the temperature gauge works no problem on this thing. The battery gauge. So it's kind of nice to have all your visuals. A lot of times by the time we get these cars so dialed in and put a lot of miles on them, I don't even really look at the FiTech thing very much anymore. You kind of just look at your gauges to keep an eye on kind of some of the essentials, but you know the truck's running right. It's all self-learning, so the more miles we put on it, the better this thing seems to run. We're just gonna make a U-turn here. Kind of the benefit of the short wheelbase too is like you can make a U-turn almost anywhere. This seems like a big truck, but it's no problem just whipping it around in an intersection like that. I really like the short bed for the maneuverability. You get that up to high seating position, but you're not in a super long truck. So parking is easy, maneuvering in and out of driveways and garages, all that stuff. It helps to have the short bed. The long bed has its purpose. I know a lot of guys, you know, the big deal back in the day with a truck was, what was the point of having a short bed if you couldn't, you know, you couldn't fit a sheet of plywood in there or something, you know, a 4x8 sheet. Trucks were like very much like, you know, you only had one if you were working. Nowadays, everybody has trucks, you know, it's kind of just like you don't have to work it every day to justify owning a truck. So the short bed still makes sense. And then when you put it in the context of like this thing's a classic, you know, there is guys still working C10s and C20s every single day on job sites and stuff. These trucks are so bulletproof and durable, they'll kind of last forever. But for something this nice and the paint job it has and the LS engine, all that good stuff that it has, the short bed's not a downfall. You know, it's kind of like, it's just a little bit better looking in my opinion. And it has some maneuverability and some other pluses, you know. So you can see this thing's making plenty of torque. We're not even at 3,000 RPM. Some of the smaller displacement LS engines, you want to get on the freeway like this, you're going to have to wind it out a lot more RPM just to get up to speed. This thing, not really pushing it that hard. It's got plenty of power to get this thing down the road, so you don't have to do a whole lot, which is nice. You know, in a truck like this, you don't want to feel like you're pushing this thing like to its very limits just to go for a drive, you know. Not a lot of road noise either. So I've had a suburban version of one of these trucks, and you know, the wind buffeting and stuff, like the truck is not designed to be a modern luxury car. So I kind of just lived with whatever wind noise coming off the windshield and stuff. But this truck has all new seals. It has soundproofing on the floor and on the firewall. And the LS is not a super loud engine. So the wind noise really isn't bad in this thing. I mean, I'm not like shouting or anything. It's not, like I said, it's not like cruising in a Mercedes-Benz. But that's to be expected in a truck this old. I think we found a happy medium too with the 35s. It's not a huge lift. Once you go like 37s on an old truck, they get a little less fun to drive around all the time. This is like a nice happy medium. The truck looks lifted. It's got a ton of ground clearance. You know, when we went and shot the promotional videos for this truck, we went out to the desert and we didn't do any hardcore crawling or anything, but hills that kind of look, you know, like a car would just get completely stuck. And this thing was no problem. I was able to do most things just in two-wheel drive in this truck. And it climbed over like a couple little rocks. No problem in this truck. You know, really, like the ground clearance is not an issue. It's more than you'll find in almost any off-the-shelf off-road vehicle from the dealership. You know, this thing has more than that. And it's a solid axle, you know, Dana axle in the front. So it's nothing weak. You know, this is pretty stout parts, pretty basic, simple stuff that you're gonna have a hard time braking with these tires and stuff. Although I will say the 6-liter has enough power where if you really try to get out there and you start bouncing this thing over rocks and doing full throttle, I mean, yeah, maybe you might break something, but that's kind of any vehicle that you do that to. And this one is so nice. It's hard for me to imagine somebody taking this out on a pretty hardcore trail and bashing it up against rocks and stuff. Really hard for me to imagine that with this truck, but to each his own. Once you win this vehicle, it's up to you what you do with it. If it were mine, I'd probably do exactly what we're doing now. I would just drive this thing. I would take it out, maybe go camping, maybe go on like a light trail, like little fire roads and stuff like that where it's not gonna get too beat up. Stuff like that is fun. You know, the 4x4, you don't have to worry about getting stuck or getting in trouble, you know. So stuff like that would probably be my use for it. That was a pretty good curve. I take a lot of cars on that curve and see how the suspension is. This one was pretty good, not bad. It's got a sway bar and everything, so it didn't feel like we were gonna tip it over. But pretty smooth overall. It's got Rancho shocks. We do have another set of shocks that we were thinking about trying on it to see if they would be even smoother. I know Rancho shocks are really good. I've used them on a lot of vehicles, and like I think the new Z71 trucks come stock with a Rancho shock. It's like kind of an off-road shock. But because of that, I think they are a little stiffer. So we bought a set of Bilsteins that we were gonna try out. We were gonna see, maybe we just swap them real quick and see if it rides any smoother around town. But this is really not that bad, you know. I don't feel like it's beating me up. I think the bench seat helps a lot with that, you know. It's not a super firm seat like you would find in just a normal car, so it absorbs a little bit of those bounces. But it's got kind of character. It's not like so bad that you're hitting your head on the roof. I've been in vehicles that they feel like they have no suspension. This one's not like that. This one's smooth enough. It's just it's a 70s truck, you know. So it's not riding like a Cadillac. Our standards get pretty high with the RestoModded cars that we do. I mean, we end up with wanting to make those cars ride and drive like a modern vehicle, and that's like kind of our standard with those. And there is ways to do it with these trucks. You know, I have seen like Roadster Shop, their big thing now is they're replacing the whole chassis, and they're basically giving you like modern independent front suspension from a brand new truck. So that's hard to beat. And that's a good move. You know, that's kind of the way to go if you do want to get that modern compliance ride. But this is actually really good. Everything's fresh on here. It's got urethane bushings, and it's got new springs, new shocks. All the steering's been gone through. So with everything being new, you do have like a pretty good ride, you know, for what the truck is. It's still on leaf springs. So that being said, it's really not bad. I mean, these roads are some of the worst here in San Diego, but you saw once you get on the freeway, you know, it's pretty smooth and you're not worried about it anymore at that point. So we're gonna turn back into kind of our our business park area where the warehouse is. So nice little ride. Once again, like I said, the only thing I noticed right now, and I think it's just all new parts, I might have to go in there and lubricate them a little bit. But when you press on the brake, you hear a little squeak from the pedal assembly. It's not from the booster or the master. This thing has disc brakes in the front, drum brakes in the back, and it stops good. The power assist works really good. These are big, heavy tires. We have steel wheels on there. One of my favorite parts about the build is those wheels. But they're heavy, but they're strong too. So like, you know, the weight of the tire and everything, you're not gonna have any problem with these wheels. The only thing is, like, you know, stopping this thing takes a power brake assist, and it works killer on this thing. So I'm happy we finished. We dialed in that upgrade with the Wilwood master cylinder and all new calipers, all new hoses, all that stuff being brand new really helps with the braking on this thing. You know, I never felt like, you know, sometimes you get an old truck or an old car and you feel like you can't follow at a normal pace. You got to give yourself a ton of stopping distance. Not the case with this. You don't have to worry too much about that. In an emergency stop, this thing will do just fine. All right, that's it. That concludes the ride along. Super fun time. Just cruising this thing. Not doing anything too crazy. Although it is 4x4, I do want to take it on a trail, but it kind of pains me to get this black paint like rock chipped. We did put some PPF down here so that even driving along, just the little rocks that these tires are gonna grab won't chip up that beautiful black paint. I did take it through a mud puddle on our original video, and that was a nightmare to clean up, so I don't want to do that again. But we did prove it's capable to do a little bit of off-roading if that's what you want to do. Today we just went on a nice calm cruise just to give you guys a little bit of the driving experience, talk about how the truck works, enjoy some of the features. We had the AC on the whole time, cruised on the freeway, a little bit of roads here and there. Nothing wild, but I'm glad that you guys got to come along with me, and I'm glad that I got to take this K10 on a nice leisurely drive. Can't believe I'm calling that a day at work, but that's what it is. So thanks for watching, and you could get entered to win this K10.